The second half of the season is underway, and this is where some hitters just need to step their game up. So today I'm going to look at 5 hitters that I think will turn a first half that was good into a second half that could be great. We're going to start in New York with a Mets team that has been not so good for the most part. It's hard to even know what is going to happen with this team the rest of the year. But let's start with a guy we know is going to stick around, and he's been good for, he's been excellent for several years, and that's Starling Marte. He's a career .287 hitter, always among the league leaders in stolen bases, plays excellent defense. But this year, like a lot of Mets, just hasn't lived up to expectations. He's only batting .254. I mean, not a power hitter, but he, in his prime, hit 20 home runs. We expect at least to be in the teens. Only gone deep 5 times this year. Really, the only thing he's helping you in fantasy is with steals. He's got 24. But when you look under the hood, a little deeper at the StatCast numbers, he should be performing better. Now, first, let me remind you that this is a player coming off of a finger injury, and even though it didn't stop him from being there on opening day, you can tell it's kind of bothered him throughout the first part of the season. The time off during the All-Star break tends to help hitters who have nagging injuries, give them a little bit of rest. But the other thing I want to point out is that he has underachieved based on expected stats. His expected batting average shows that he should be hitting 14 points higher, but his expected slugging shows that he's underachieving by 79 points. I really think we're going to start to see the Marte of old throughout the end of this season. If he's really helping you in steals, the average I think will pick up closer to his career mark, and hopefully that means more runs scored and a few more dingers too. Another good sign, his 39.9% hard hit rate is actually the best of his career. So he's making good contact. Plate discipline hasn't changed. He hasn't lost a step. Just needs some better results, and I think they'll come. Let's go with another Mets outfielder now, a guy who may very well not be a Met by the time the season ends, depending on whether they are sellers or buyers at the trade deadline. Tommy Pham. He's been doing actually pretty well in the time that he's been on the field, but just not sure where he fits in with this team. Now, obviously a veteran, a guy who's expected to perform, help this team contend. If they just show that they're not going to be contenders and they're going to start to cut costs, he could be on the move. But that's not a bad thing, is it? I mean, at this point, if there's a contender that wants a guy like him, might be a better place for him. He's shown that when motivated, he can be one of the better hitters in baseball at times. A few years ago, when he was first traded from St. Louis to Tampa, he was absolutely on fire the second half of that season. Maybe something similar will happen. As for the here now, I mean, you can't argue with what he has done. As far as X stats goes, he's in the top 10 percentile across the board. An XBA of 298, X slugging of 523, and X WOBA of 389. Plus, his plate discipline is actually getting better with age. He's got an 11.3% K minus BB percentage. That's strikeout rate minus walk rate. That's pretty low. Look, this guy has power. He has speed. Gets to a better situation. I mean, this is somebody who really can help you across all categories. All right, out of New York, now into Chicago. Another team that is probably going to be and should be a seller, the Chicago White Sox. One guy who is slugging but is still a little bit under the radar is Jake Burger. No puns here. I'm just going to flat out tell you he has a ridiculous barrel rate. He is crushing the ball, which is why he has 21 home runs so far. But I think the best is yet to come. I mean, you look at the batting average, 222, not so good. I think this guy's just a slugger shoe. He helps you in the power categories, hurts you in average. But he is also one of the biggest underachievers. He should be hitting a full 34 points higher, which not amazing, but that's definitely more serviceable, closer to league average at least. And he's not wasting any time after the break. Already in the first 3 games since the All-Star break, has 2 home runs in back-to-back nights. Over the past 50 plate appearances, his rolling slugging rate is up 323. Catching heat again, and even though White Sox, again, not really living up to expectations, so much talent, especially in that lineup, not sure why they can't figure out how to win with it, but the fact that they might trade off a piece or two just means that reinforces he's going to be an everyday player. So unlike Patrick Wisdom, the other Chicago team, who I said way back in the beginning of the season was a guy who would help you with a few home runs, but tank your average and then wind up cooling off and just be droppable, which he was. I'm buying into Burger. This guy was a high-end prospect going throughout the minors. Injuries set him back, but once he arrived at the majors, he's been hitting the ball hard. I think the average will be fine. So I'm buying low right now or picking him up if he's available on waivers. All right, let's go with another third baseman, this time a left-hander, but somebody in the same division, Edouard Julien of Minnesota. Now, I'm a little hesitant here because it's like every time I go for a sleeper on the Twins lineup, they kind of let me down. Jose Miranda, beginning of the season, wound up getting sent down. And then Royce Lewis was looking good, and then he got hurt again. Let's see if third time's a charm with Julien. Now, he's one of the biggest risers, especially in the power department, blistering in July, hitting .429 with 3 home runs. And that's just in 21 plate appearances. Now, the one drawback here is as a left-handed slugger, he's not going to face a lot of lefties, and if he does, he's not going to do much with it. So he's hit 167 against left-handers so far this year. Still going to be kind of in a platoon, but he's got the strong side of it. And as we've seen with a lot of players, especially in Tampa Bay, don't need necessarily everyday playing time to be productive. Definitely known to be a power over hit tool guy. Grades out at 60 power, only 40 as far as hit goes. Look, in the minors, he was hitting 293 AAA this year, hit 300 last year. I think he's proven that he can get some base hits other than the ones that go over the yard. Right now hitting 285 here in the major league level. And then the biggest underachiever of them all, the guy who heads the list when you talk about differential between actual stats and expected stats, especially in batting average, that is Keibert Ruiz in Washington. You look at his stat line, it's kind of typical for a catcher, right? Lowish average of 235. But he's got some power. He's got 11 home runs, just hit one, 35 RBIs, which is pretty good considering he plays for the Nationals. But Ruiz, who has, by the way, the best strikeout rate among all hitters in the majors, that's right, 100th percentile, only strikes out 9.3% of the time. He actually should be hitting 275. Got a great eye, can hit for average. He's already hitting for power. Looks like he could finish with 20 home runs. The only real concern here is the RBI opportunities or lack of because of the team context. But we've seen this a lot. Once the trade deadline has come and gone, and then, teams know who they are and where they're at, some of these lesser teams like to play spoiler. They like to pick things up, guys playing for pride, playing for contracts. You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if Washington does pick up the pace a little bit. Either way, it never hurts to have a catcher who can help you on offense. Ruiz right now not viewed as a high-end asset in fantasy. Like, I would swap him out for somebody if you happen to have, a catcher of more prominence. Use that leverage in a 2-for-2 swap, 2-for-1, whatever you have it, and then be happy with the fact that you could get a guy like Ruiz and he's going to return you about as much offensive output as a guy like Adley Rutschman or Wilson Contreras. I think those players are going to pick up the pace big time in the second half. These are the players that you should be picking up right now.